Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar. I am Daita Sergi, Programs Coordinator with AASHE, and I'll be the moderator of today's webinar. It is my pleasure to welcome you all. As many of you know, AASHE's mission is to inspire and catalyze higher education to lead the global sustainability transformation. AASHE members represent around 20% of the colleges and universities in the US, as well as institutions in 20 countries, including Greece, Saudi Arabia, and United Kingdom. You can learn more about AASHE on our website, www.aashe.org. We provide an expansive collection of online resources, networking tools, and educational events such as today's webinar and an annual conference and expo which will be held this year, October 15 to 18 in San Antonio, Texas. Registration just opened this Monday and is now available with early bird prices until May 31st. So please visit conference.aashe.org for more information, and we hope to see you there. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. Everyone in the audience is on mute, but please feel free to ask questions or provide comments at any point during the presentation. We'll also try a new format for Q&A today, which will actually be bringing you off mute and asking your questions live or be part of the conversation. So we'll provide more information how to do that when we're closer to Q&A. But if you'd like to send your questions in writing, you can do that by typing your questions or comments in the questions pane in the control panel on your screen. At the end of the webinar, you'll have the option to provide feedback regarding today's presentation. We take your suggestions into account when planning for future webinars, so please fill out this post-webinar survey. Please note this webinar is being recorded. If you experience technical difficulties or have to leave early, you and others can view the recording later. Presentation materials will be available after the live broadcast as well. At this time, I'd like to introduce today's webinar presenters, John Bailey and Masha Spritzkar. In the interest of time, I will not go over their bios, but you can find more about the presenters on the AASHE website under this webinar listing. So finally, it is my pleasure to welcome all attendees and thank you for joining us today. At this time, I'm going to turn to John to get us started.
Right, hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Very excited to be going through this with you. So for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is John Bailey. I'm Head of Sustainability for the University of London, which is a quite bizarre university in the fact that we have kind of like 18 colleges and institutes and then the central body that we work for. And as part of that, we have student residences, which any student from any of our colleges or institutes can go to. And I'm going to be telling you about kind of, I guess, the kind of bigger picture of why we're speaking to students about sustainability on campus, which I guess for some of you will be pretty obvious, but you know, perhaps we're taking a slightly different take on it or an interesting take on it. And it's been relatively successful as well, so it's going to be quite exciting to share that with you guys. Yeah, so first of all, University of London, you may not have heard of, but you've probably heard of some of our colleges like UCL, London School of Economics, Goldsmiths, King's College, all sorts of different institutions from, you know, massive universities right down to kind of like very niche kind of art and religious institutes. We have 120,000 students based in London and 50,000 that do our distance learning programs through the International Academy. And we've had quite a few famous alumni. So I've put a couple of faces that you might recognize down there, but our alumni include presidents, prime ministers, monarchs, Nobel Prize winners, and leaders in all sorts of different fields. So first of all, we have this kind of big challenge in the university sector, and we have a huge challenge globally when it comes to sustainability. I'm sure most of you know about this already, but we have enormous population increases. You can see the global population going up and up and up. It's over 7 billion on the planet today, and most kind of population studies don't have global population flattening out until we get to about 10 or maybe even as high as 12 billion people on the planet. At the same time, we have global surface temperatures rising up at an alarming rate, and we have very limited resources. This graph here shows how many years left we have of various different precious metals and minerals in the world. You can see the darker line coming out shows you how many years we've got left if the whole world was consuming at half the rate of the West or the United States of America, and the longer line shows if we continue to consume at our current rate. And it's supposed to show you, how quickly we're using up an awful lot of these resources. Indium is an interesting one here. You'll have it almost certainly in the device that you're listening and watching this on. It goes in all sorts of things from iPhones, tablets, laptops, televisions, and it's something that we only have a few years left. And this is why kind of you now have companies that offer you money for your old mobile phones, your old laptops, etc. The resources are incredibly valuable. We also have this kind of global issue where we think we've got so many more people on the planet, so many more people yet to be born, longer life expectancy, and you start to think, well, where are these people going to live? What are the resources that they're going to have? I don't know if any of you have visited London, but you may recognise this building. This is Buckingham Palace, and an artist's impression of that with shanty towns built all around it in St James's and Hyde Park. And this is a very famous building in the city of London, the kind of economic capital of the country. And this shows you after the real economic collapse, and this what was once the CEO of Citibank's office has now been turned into social housing and has got someone's dirty washing hung up in the windows there. And this is a view of what London would look like if we had a 4-degree rise in temperatures across the planet. So you can see for London, this is a very, very big issue, sustainability and climate change. And you might think, well, these are huge problems, and what can we do as universities, and what is our role in actually solving these issues? First and foremost, we have the responsibility, the role as educators and researchers. We have an awful lot of government policies coming through in the UK and from the European Union as well. We have carbon management linked to our funding in the higher education sector, all sorts of legislation, and huge costs when it comes to energy. And those costs are just going up and up and up. And we also have league tables for kind of green and environmental performance in the UK, which is all driving universities to tackle these issues. Yeah, overall in the UK, universities have cut energy use by just 2.5% since 2010. So we're not meeting the targets that we should be. At the University of London, I'm pleased to say that things are a bit better. So on this next slide, you'll be able to see how we've been reducing carbon emissions over time. It says 32% carbon there. We've actually got that up to 40% cut in carbon emissions now. All of our electricity is purchased from companies that provide renewable energy. We're saving over £1 million, which I think is about $1.2 million on our energy bills. We have very good recycling rates. We have international standards for our environmental management system, loads of cyclists, beehives, international leaders, London leaders, and we're award winners when it comes to sustainability. So we see a very important role for ourselves in London. We believe that the world's future leaders are here studying today, and we think it's absolutely essential that the students who are at the University of London today leave understanding the challenges of climate change, and also understanding that the solutions to climate change and sustainability are perhaps more simple than you might expect. Now, obviously, the pedagogy is a very, very important part of education, but alone it is not enough. The UK has some of the top research when it comes to climate science, yet universities are not performing. We know exactly what we're supposed to do, yet we're still not achieving it in a sector which is relatively wealthy and should be very, very well educated. Many of you may have heard the term the Anthropocene, but it's a terrifying prospect that we are causing, as big a extinction on the planet now than there was during the time when the dinosaurs got wiped out. We've got atmospheric CO2 going up, nitrogen going up. We've got all these things, population, all going up at an alarming rate. So we need to change the way we live, and we also need to change the way that the future leaders that are coming to our university live. And we find that when students come to the university, when they move into our halls of residence, that is a really, really key time in their life. It's a time when they adopt all sorts of habits that they'll then keep for the rest of their lives. So this is our theory. We'll change the way they live, where they live in London. And for us, that's getting into the halls of residence and really affecting how they experience the university and university life. And this is where our program Reduce the Juice comes in. Reduce the Juice is an energy saving competition, a water saving competition, a recycling competition. There's loads of prizes. It's fun, it's engaging, it's very, very simple, and we found it to be very, very effective at driving down carbon emissions, driving down water use, and we'll take you through some of that. So the main basis of the program is to have a competition. We get students recruited at our freshers fairs when they first join up. I guess this is your freshman fairs that you might have in the US. We empower the students with training. We have a website with live league tables, with data going into it. We have really, really fantastic prizes, including cash prizes that the students get to decide what they do and where they spend their money. And we have an awful lot of comms as well, so loads and loads of communication, traditional forms, but also across various different platforms of social media. I'm just going to skip through a couple of, I suppose, kind of quite nice looking infographics that we use as a way of communicating with the students on sustainability. You can get a feel for how we like to do things with this. We try and make things obvious and engaging. We're not telling people about how many kilowatt hours they've saved or maybe tons of carbon. We're trying to make it relatable to things that the students will understand and know about. So, whether that's hot air balloons to represent tons of carbon, whether it's flights from London to New York and how many of those we can save by doing this. And you get a nice feel for the kind of comms and graphics that we're using, so trying to make it kind of engaging and simple to understand for the students. We really make the data work for the project as well, so we have these live league tables that show how they're doing, whether it's on water, energy, or carbon, and waste as well. And these league tables kind of go up and down, and there's a national competition as well as the kind of local competition amongst the halls in the particular institutes themselves. So for the students, there's really great prizes. We give free hooded sweatshirts, which are very, very useful if you've ever experienced the English winter. We have like fun meetings and training, great life skills for the students, and it looks great on their CV or their resume. For the university, we have reduced energy, reduced CO2, reduced waste, fantastic return on investment, engaged students, and we have new ideas from the students as well. So down on the bottom of the screen, you can see something called part-time carnivore, and this was a student idea where they're trying to get us to introduce more vegetarian meals within the halls of residence, and also a swap shop that the students now run annually, where people can exchange their unwanted clothes for other people's unwanted clothes. And these are really great ideas which wouldn't have come through unless we had this engagement program with the students. So 2015 was really a proof of concept year for us. We ran it in our own halls. We had over 2,000 students involved in the project. We spent about £5,000 and got £18,000 in savings when it came off our energy bill. We had recycling rates at over 80% in the halls during our kind of focused engagement periods. We had 2 of the student projects launched, which I told you about, and we had some rather bizarre things, including 8 students photographed themselves in a shower, And this was after we kind of like tongue-in-cheek suggested that a great way to save water and energy was to share a shower. And you can imagine our shock when this picture appeared on our Facebook page of all these students in the shower. Thankfully, we didn't get any formal complaints about that, but I think we were a little bit worried for a few moments. 2016 for us has been a real pilot year. We've had 5 universities involved, tens of halls involved, and tens of thousands of students involved as well. And Masha's going to be telling you a little bit more about that later on. 2017, this is going to be the launch year. We're hoping to get more universities involved. We've been speaking to universities around the world, and perhaps we can help other universities set up something similar or provide materials and do some sort of kind of international link with that. But ultimately, we're trying to affect more and more students. We think we've got a really, really fantastic project, and we want to get it out there and share it with as many people as we possibly can. So by 2050, the world needs to be heading, nearly to carbon neutral, and the race is on. Which country is going to be the first to do it? Will it be the United Kingdom? Will it be the United States of America? Maybe it'll be China. Maybe it'll be someone from left field. And I'd really love it if it's one of our alumni that gets to announce at COP56, which I reckon is about when we're going to announce that we're carbon neutral, that we've done it, we've achieved zero carbon, and there we go, hooray, we've all done it, and it's all been because of, partially because of the work that we've been doing on the ground with the students and the future world leaders that we have here today. So thank you very much. That's it from me. I'm going to hand over to Masha, and she'll be taking you through this in a little bit more detail.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Masha, and I run Reduce the Juice program. Let me just make this the full screen mode. All right, so John has already told you a couple of things, but yeah, I have been running the program for almost a year now, and I'm going to give you just a little bit more details. So you've already heard that basically this is a student sustainability engagement program that focuses on 3 key areas. So reducing energy consumption, reducing water consumption, and then increasing recycling rates in the student accommodation halls. And then the key objectives are really to embed sustainable behaviors, because I'm sure that most of you already know that it has been proven that when you make a significant change in your life, like move from the other side of the world to the UK to study, you're more likely to adopt other new behaviors as well. So we're sort of kind of like hoping to benefit from that. We also want to reduce overall environmental impact and ultimately really engage students in sustainability. However, as John mentioned, we run it as a competition because unfortunately, sustainability is not the top priority of all the students, but everyone does love a good competition. So this is how the project has been set up. And the competition really happens at 2 levels. So when it was first piloted just with University of London, there was only 1 level, but then the following academic year, which was this academic year that's now coming to an end, 4 other universities, well, they've heard about the project and they were really impressed and they wanted to run it in their halls of residence as well. And we said, well, yes, that's not a problem. So we are now a UK-wide competition, and that also means that the program and the competition happens on 2 levels. So we have the university-wide level, and so what we do is we run 3 month-long sprints, and each sprint focuses on one of the key reduce the juice areas. So in November we ran an energy saving sprint. In February, so in November 2016 we ran an energy saving sprint. In February 2017 we ran the water saving sprint, and then finally in April 2017 we ran a recycling sprint. There's a different number of halls taking part from each university. So for example, with LSE we only had 2 halls taking part, but with Heriot-Watt they had 7 halls taking part in the competition. So with the sprints, the halls only compete against other halls from the same university, and we wanted to do that because in a way it's then easier for them to win a prize. Otherwise they would have to wait a whole year to maybe beat other 19 halls that are also taking part and then maybe get a prize. But because we also have these 3 sprints spread throughout the year, it really keeps the momentum going and the engagement is there throughout the whole year. And then also it gives them, they have a greater opportunity to actually win a prize, which then again motivates them further. But then there's also the UK-wide competition, and we're just about, we still have some data crunching to do, but there's going to be one hall, and this is the hall that has reduced energy consumption the most, has reduced water consumption the most, and has increased recycling the most. There's going to be one winning hall, which will then get the overall prize. So I guess for students it's also interest to see how they compare, not just with the other halls from the same university, but they also see how they're doing compared to their colleagues in Edinburgh or to their colleagues in Bristol. And I thought I'd just take you through how we carried out our water saving sprint, which was really, really successful. So students, they have a lot on their plate, so their lives change quite significantly, and there's a lot of things that they're being offered to do, and there's the university, there's the work, the coursework that they have to do. So we were really thinking, okay, how do we engage them? So John already told you that we go to freshers fairs where we recruit students that then act as ambassadors for the project. We give them the hoodies, and they are sort of our eyes and ears. So because we can only be in the halls for a limited amount of time, so when we're not there, they're promoting the project for us. They're doing the communications, they're putting the posters up, they can answer any questions, and then also every time they wear the hoodie, on the back side there's our link to our Facebook page, the link to our Twitter channel. So it's kind of like every time they're wearing the hoodie, they're promoting the project as well. And the hoodies have proven to be really, really popular, and the students really love them. And also I think they do work, because it has happened quite a lot when I went to the university and I was talking to students and I said, oh, so have you heard about Reduce the Juice? And some of them say, oh yeah, no, I haven't actually, but I did see some people wearing your hoodies. So it's a great way to kind of like raise awareness. And the students, yeah, they just really love them. So with the water sprint, obviously, apologies, I just okay, this chat does not concern me. So when we run the training for the student ambassadors, we are somewhat only targeting the students that are already interested in sustainability, and that's really important because you need that keen person that's going to kind of like keep the momentum going. But then if you want to see significant change, you really need to reach out to all the students that are living in the halls, and they might not be motivated enough to actually attend your training session. So what we did is a lot of the halls that took part were catered. So we said, okay, so why don't we just go there during dinner time, because at least 80 or 90% of the students will be there, and then do something that's going to be interesting enough for them to actually start the conversation with us. So I personally am not a big fan of freebies, but they do work to a certain extent because it kind of like lures people in. But I didn't want to give just something that, you know, is going to end up in the rubbish bin after 5 minutes. So we were thinking quite a lot about that, and in the end we decided that when we were promoting our water sprint, we are going to be giving away succulents. A, because they're really trendy and really popular. B, because they do not require a lot of water to grow. C, because they will act as a constant reminder throughout the whole month to save water. And D, because, well, if you have succulents, you know that they're really easy to take care of, so a really appropriate plant for a student to have. And we were right, the students really loved them, and they thought it was a brilliant idea. Again, it was something that no one has ever given to them before, so it generated a lot of interest and a lot of attention. But what we also had then, we had the travel-sized shower gels, and those were quite popular as well. And then also when we were talking to them, sharing our top water saving tips, we were really focusing on them taking shorter showers, because we felt that kind of like focusing on one message and really stressing that message has a better impact rather compared to giving them 10 water saving tips. So we chose that we're going to really encourage the shorter showers. So hence the travel sized shower gels, because then we could say, so we're running the water sprint. A really good way to save water is to take shorter showers. So every time you're going to use the shower gel, you'll be reminded to save water. So again, something that's not going to end up in the drawer, but something that they're going to actually use when they're showering, and then hopefully shorten their showers. Again, you have to know how long you're in the shower for, and conventionally most people use the shower timers, but we really didn't want to do that because it's been done before, and a lot of students in the UK actually get them in their welcome packs. So we were thinking, what else could we do? So we put together a Spotify playlist. We called it the Water Loving Tunes, and all the songs on the playlist were water themed, so Purple Rain or anything that had river, ocean, anything water related in the lyrics could go on the playlist. And then all the songs also were shorter than 5 minutes. Some of them were 5 minutes and some of them were 2.5 minutes. And then this also meant that you could say, so throughout the month, if you feel that 5 minutes maybe is even too much for you, you can choose a shorter song and use the Spotify playlist to time your shower. And they really liked the idea, and it has worked really well. But they also had to get the freebies. They had to do a little something in return, so there was the educational element to it. So we went with the kind of like the easiest thing for them to do. So if they felt that they were in a rush, they could only write a water saving pledge. But then we also had a easy water consumption quiz, which actually they quite enjoyed, because most of them didn't really know the answer, surprisingly, so they were really surprised to find out. Also on the left photo here, you can see that the gentleman here is wearing one of our Use the Choose hoodies. So this is one of the halls that was doing really great. So this particular hall had a student committee, and he was the sustainability officer of the committee, and he attended our training session, and he really helped us make the project a great success, because when we run the session, any session in their halls, like he would always come along and he would bring his friends with him, and the project and the messages, they were really coming from the students, so not necessarily from me. I was there supporting them and providing all the materials and freebies, but the whole messaging and the whole conversation came from the students, and it really showed that this is sort of the best case scenario. In the bottom left corner, you can also see, because this was also the hall that won the energy sprint in November, and John has told you that basically because we want students to really take ownership of the project as much as possible, we give them a budget. So if they win a sprint, they get £250 to spend, but in the best case scenario, they come up with 3 or 4 suggestions on what they want to spend their money on, and then they also vote. so this happens if the students are really engaged. In most of the cases, what happened is because also the accommodation team sometimes has some ideas of what price is appropriate and what not. Me and the accommodation team and the sustainability team came up with 3 or 4 suggestions, and then most of the halls that we worked in, they have a closed Facebook group, so then we put it up for a vote on Facebook, and then ultimately it was still the students' decision on what they want to spend the money on. But in this particular hall, they came up with the suggestions, and then also when we were doing the promotion for the water sprint, they decided what they want the price to be, and they actually, funnily enough, decided they just want a simple pizza night because it's a catered hall, but on Saturdays they don't get dinner. So on a Saturday they got £250 worth of pizzas, and they really enjoyed it. So John has briefly touched on it already, but we kind of try to keep our branding really sharp, clean, on trend, because there's so much available for the students. So unless it looks good, you know, you're sort of taking the risk that the students just won't be bothered to really look at it. So we try to make everything we do that is nicely designed, interesting, something that they'll find beautiful enough to look and to read about. And you can also see the succulents with kind of like a little prompt, be a water saver. So yes, and then also John has mentioned that this was somewhat a pilot year for us, because it was the first year that we ran Reuse the Juice in other universities as well, not just at the University of London's intercollegiate halls. So we were quite honest with all the universities that we just want to really try as many different things as possible, because I think it's important that you do your research. It's important that you think about what sort of intervention you're going to run, but then at some point I think you just have to try and see what works. So we try to do as many different things as possible this year, and really see, and we have really seen that some things have worked really well and some things haven't worked that well. And then I was quite surprised because throughout the sprints we do some sort of engagement once a week, and then I think it was the third or the second or the third week of the water sprint when I said, I'm not entirely sure how popular this will be because it's not incredibly innovative, but I ran a Facebook competition where the students were asked to submit their top water saving tips, and then they entered the draw to win a Reuse the Juice hoodie. And to my big surprise, it was really, really popular. We got loads of entries, and in the end I decided to give out a few more hoodies that I initially planned, just because we were really pleased with how that goes. So kind of like going back to the point that I was making. So I could have just said, well, this is too basic, they're not gonna like it, they've seen this before, it's not gonna work, and I could not have done it, but it would be such a shame and such a missed opportunity because it has worked really well. And because it has worked really well, we did it again with the recycling sprint, and then again got lots of responses. The students got really engaged, so most of our social media communication actually happened in the closed Facebook groups, and then the students start teasing each other, and then also you get funny suggestions like to save water, I'll drink more beer or something like that. So we then also include those sort of tips in our communications that follow that, because we don't want it to be too serious, because it's for the students, and you know, they like to have a good joke. So we try to do that as well. At one of the universities we had a really amazing response, and then the accommodation team was really happy about that, and they've asked us to produce a poster with students top water saving tips, and then they've printed those off and they've put it on their all the internal online communication channels. They were in all of the halls, and this girl here, she was just so excited that she won the hoodie, that she sent us a photo once she received it, even though we did not ask them to do that. But she was like, oh my God, I received your hoodie today. It was brilliant. I love it. It's perfect. And yeah, she attached a photo of herself. So from something that was really simple and something that, you know, we could also not get that many responses, it worked really well. And then we decided to replicate it again for the recycling sprint. Here are some badges that we made. Again, it's something that, you know, they put on their t-shirt, and it's at least gonna stay on their t-shirt or on their bag until they have to wash it. We included the rock on with fears, so again trying to keep it snazzy, trying to keep it interesting for them. And then it's something that's just partially plastic and is not going to end up in the rubbish bin straight away, and will keep acting as a reminder of what we're asking them to do. This was just to say about the prizes. So yes, in order for the students to take more ownership of the project, we give them a budget, and they decide what to spend the money on. This is a photo from one of the pizza parties. We did have quite a lot of pizza parties. Surprisingly, they are really, really popular. Another pizza party, and this is some simple but recycled decorations. So one of the students, so this is kind of like showing that the reduce the juice covers the three main areas, but because you started the conversation with students, and once they get engaged, they did actually email me quite a lot, and they were saying, oh, so I'm in charge of the Christmas decoration in my hall this year. Do you have any ideas what we could do? So I suggested them to use old newspaper to do some decorations and reuse what they already have, and they've sent me this. Yes, so it's been a really interesting and busy year. We've seen some things have gone well, some things have gone have been a bit more challenging. For example, it's pretty obvious once you think about it, but actually we noticed that because it was mostly the sustainability teams that hired us to deliver the project, but what has proven is crucial is the relationship that we had with the accommodation teams, because ultimately it was the hall manager that gave us access to the hall, and in all of the halls where the hall managers and the accommodation team was really on board, the project was much more successful. Another challenge, or for example a challenging aspect, was some of the halls did not have a closed Facebook group, so it was much harder to reach the students. So this was another lesson learned, that maybe going forward when the universities are approaching us and asking us to deliver, this is something that we have to mention before we start the project. Here are some of the stats. So the numbers are actually higher because this was, I think I put this together a couple of months ago, and since then we've run more sprints and more energy has been saved and more water has been saved, and we've delivered more events. But just to give you an idea, on average we charge the participating universities £1,500 to deliver the project. We had 20 residential halls taking part. At that point, the students saved 4,200 cubic meters of water. We had 80 student SEALs, so students call themselves SEALs, which stands for Sustainability, Engagement and Action Leaders. So these are the ambassadors that do the training and then have the hoodies and then can answer all the questions when we're not there. Lots of energy saved, lots of really cool and fun and engaging events. But then also there were a few other things that came about as a result of us delivering Reduce the Juice. So at one university, we linked up with some with a PhD student that's doing some behavior change research about saving water. So we were working closely with them. We also worked closely with a student union, and then they asked us for our input where they were preparing their energy saving booklet. So this is something again that, you know, has happened because we tried to build good relationship with not just the sustainability teams, but with other teams on campus that are doing similar work. Another student that's doing a design course and is a keen runner, but was also a sealed and designed some water saving flyers for us. And then again, this is something that's not sort of in the most basic scope of Reduce the Juice, but it sort of happened organically. Quite a lot of students then see us as another as someone who they can share their ideas with. So we've had quite a lot of feedback. So a year ago they introduced the part-time carnivore, and then this year they were asking us, could we have even more vegetarian meals? So we did another survey, and we've now started a conversation with our catering team to have even more vegetarian options in our hall. So again, this is a result of the engagement that we did with Reduce the Juice, but it's not necessarily a very straightforward link with the original project. And this is sort of for the universities that were interested. So another challenge was for us that we really seen that if the university doesn't supply us the data, it can become a bit challenging and a bit frustrating. So kind of like, we deliver the project, but we do need some help and support from the universities that are taking part as well. And I think I already slightly ran over, so I'm gonna stop at this point. I hope you found it interesting, and I think we have the final 20 minutes for the Q&A.
Thank you so much, John and Masha, for sharing your expertise with us today. We will now turn to our audience for questions. Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone to send your questions via the questions pane on the GoToWebinar control panel, and we already have received a few. So we'll go through this question, and perhaps after or in the middle of the questions, we also want to pose a question back to our audience, which is, would this type of competition be something that you would like to implement, or it would be possible for you to implement at your institution? And if you would like to answer the question, please raise your GoToWebinar hand on the control panel, and when we'll get to that point, I'll know who would like to provide some input. So I'll now go through our questions, or sorry, the questions that we received. So John, at the beginning you mentioned universities have only reduced energy use by 2.5%. So how can you put that in the context of the usual, what are the usual targets, and why do you think they're not being met? What do we need to do collectively to move the needle?
It's a very good question. Firstly, when it comes to the targets, the UK has actually set sector targets. So the whole higher education sector has a collective target of reducing carbon emissions by 43% by 2020. So bearing that in mind, you can see that we are way, way off where we should be. Most universities adopted that 43% reduction target. A few have adopted higher targets and a few have adopted lower targets. There's many reasons why we're not achieving that. I think people perhaps didn't maybe anticipate how difficult it would be to reduce carbon emissions. And there's also this I suppose kind of like feeling in the sector that growth trumps everything else. So if you know, you're growing your department, you're building new buildings, that is more important than anything else. So I'm not sure why it's been so bad. I think the higher education sector is bad at making excuses for itself. But when you actually look at the numbers of students in UK higher education, it's not that different to how it was 10 years ago. So it's pretty disappointing to see that carbon emissions are falling so slowly. What do we need to do collectively to move the needle? I think universities really need to take more responsibility and start pushing this up the agenda. And when we're doing big capital development projects, we need to be making zero carbon buildings the target for all of that. We need to make sure that our staff and students are engaged and just stop using kind of growth as the excuse.
Thank you, John. Looks like your office had funds to expend for graphic design, prizes, etc. If these aren't available at my institution, what do you suggest we start with? What are some low-cost ways to engage students and impact their behavior?
So the design side of things, it's something that I'm passionate about in my free time. So the designs, we produced all of the designs ourselves, so we didn't spend any money on that. I guess we were lucky enough that this is something that I'm interested in and that I have the skills to do it. Otherwise, we did at some point have a student helping us, and they didn't know how to use Adobe. So there are some online tools like Canva, for example, which are free to use, or they get even easier to use if you pay a small fee. And with Canva, for example, you can produce very nicely designed things because you have many templates. So I would say if you can afford it, I think it's worth spending a little bit of budget on getting some designs, because I think making things that look nice and are appealing, it's quite important nowadays. But if you can't do that, then Canva is one program that pops to mind. But then I'm sure there are many other online tools that are easy to use, and you can achieve similar results. And then so if you think about a whole year of engagement and all the freebies and that we've given away, and then the number of students, so in each hall we have at least 300 students, so we had to be quite smart on how we spent the money and not making the program really expensive. So it's just looking for ways to get a good deal. So most of the freebies that apart from the hoodies are a bit more expensive, especially because we also bought ones that were fair trade, organic, so kind of like practicing what we're preaching. But then with the freebies, with the succulents and everything else, we didn't really spend more than £1 per freebie. So there are nice and cheap and affordable things that you can get. Although it did take us quite some time to sometimes come up with the idea, so it's worth again just spending some time on the brainstorming and really coming up with something that's different, interesting, but also affordable.
Thank you. How many people do you have on your staff helping you run the program?
It's not many. So Masha works on the program full time, and then when it comes down to it, really, it's just about engaging the kind of managers in the halls of residence, engaging students, and getting them to help out. I mean, we do have a couple of points when we need to draft in extra people from the team just to help out for a day or two, particularly when the new students arrive in September and October. We'll get people from all over the department, not just sustainability, but we've had project managers helping out at Freshers' Fairs before, just to get the numbers and get the students engaged. So it's possible to do it with one person with 5 universities, but I don't know if Masha would thank me for saying that, because I think there's been times when perhaps she has been a little bit overworked. But as her boss, I can't let her know that. She should be coping absolutely fine with it.
Thank you. So the other question, what departments on campus are your main partners for the competition?
So I mentioned this briefly. So it was mostly other sustainability teams that, well, no, it was other sustainability teams in all of the universities. It was always the sustainability team that established the initial contact with us, and I'm assuming that also the budget for the project was taken from their sustainability budget. But then crucially, what we've seen throughout the year, we really had to work closely with the accommodation team, and in most of the universities we had a really good relationship with the accommodation team, and yeah, in one university we struggled a bit, and it made a massive difference. So it's from one sustainability team to another, but then crucially to make projects a success, you need a hall manager that's on board and the accommodation team that's really standing behind you and supporting you as well.
Thank you. Can you give examples of the types of trainings you hold for energy reduction, and who are the target attendees for the trainings?
So the trainings, we only ran the trainings at the very beginning of the academic year, so in September and October, and we do two trainings. One is for staff, for hall managers, for residential assistants, for senior members who are sort of there, and the wardens team. I'm not sure if you use the exact same names, but for kind of like the whole management team and the team that's there to support the students. So it's really important that they know about the project, that they know what we're trying to achieve, and then if I didn't have the time to go around the halls to put up posters in London, I could email them and ask them to do me the favor if the students also were too busy studying. And then the other training was for the student ambassadors, for the SEALs. So we went to freshers fairs. They could sign up, give us their email, and then we would email them the training session. If you'd like to be a SEAL and if you'd like to get a free hoodie, attend this training session, and then we would cover everything on how to communicate sustainability, how to encourage behavior change, what we're asking them to do, how should they promote the project, yeah, so two target audiences, the staff and the students. I think
Thank you. We actually had a related question about how you enlist student ambassadors, and you already answered that part, but do you also pay them?
No, they get the hoodie, which is something that they really like. And we were actually thinking about one university was interested in paying a few students to do the role, and we were really excited that we are going to be able to do it, because it would be a really interesting comparison to us to see for how much of a difference would it make and how much more or less we would get out of it. Unfortunately, then the university decided not to do it, but now that we're starting conversations with universities for next year, is something that we always mention, and it's something that we are really keen to do. Again, just because we're interested to see how it works, and then if it doesn't work, at least we know that it doesn't work, and we'll also know why. And then if it does work, it's worth thinking about whether a few extra pounds make a substantial difference. So it's something that we're interested in and would like to do, but we haven't done it yet.
Thank you. Do you have sustainability advocates in all halls? What do you do if you do not?
We do, well, we were lucky enough that we did have sustainability advocates in all halls. So again, because the freshers are are normally in September and October, and luckily the students are really keen, so we kind of like take the opportunity. They're really motivated, so if you approach them there, then yeah, they're quite happy to take part. So luckily we didn't have the situation, we didn't have to come up with a solution for a case where none of the students would sign up. But generally, quite a lot of students are really interested in sustainability and they do find it important. So yeah, let's hope that we're not going to have to find a solution to that particular problem.
Well, this next question may ask more on that. In this day and age, students have a large number of responsibilities when it comes to attending a university. How do we make sustainability a priority for them? How do we market this opportunity to students that have never seen sustainability as an important cause?
So with the ambassadors, you normally get the students that are already somewhat interested in sustainability and they are passionate about it, and it's crucial to have them on board because you need the passion to kind of like keep the sustainability engagement. But what we did then, like I already mentioned in the presentation, you have to get all of them on board to see significant change. So, and we were aware that we're never going to get 300 students to attend our training because they just won't be interested in it. So what we then did is we went into the halls during dinner times where 80 or 90% we were there for 2 or 3 hours, depending on depending on how long the dinner slot was, and we were just there. And because we had something interesting going on, because we were giving away succulents, because they were like, why are you here, why are you doing this? And as soon as a few of them come over, then the rest of them just follow. So it was a very easy way to target 80 to 90% of residents.
Thank you. How do you calculate the numbers for your posters and communication, such as the number of hot air balloons or cars off the road? Are there global standards or is it by country? Where do you find this data?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the statistic where we get the data from. The hot air balloon one is very simple. That's just 1 ton of carbon, so it's quite an easy kind of visual representation that you can use for a ton of carbon. In the UK, there's kind of very particular measures. So when we report our carbon emissions, we have to measure it using calculations that are provided by the government that tell you what the average carbon is in the national grid in terms of the kind of the sources that it's come from and what that kind of carbon relates to in terms of the kilowatt hours that you have. So they are kind of UK-based statistics. I don't know if you have something similar across the pond, as it were, but yeah, we tend to use official statistics, and then there's some really great books and resources online, and books like How Bad Are Bananas, where you can get these great little stats on what your carbon emissions means in a particular engageable way, like something that people see every day and understand it and can visualize. So we're always looking for something that we think will make sense to the students and the staff that we're communicating with.
Thank you, John. We have 2 questions left, and nobody has raised their hand to contribute to the conversation live, but we would still want to know if such a program would work at your institution. Let us know in your comments, and I'll go over the last 2 questions and see if any other comments come in. So which sprint was more successful and why? Which one was less successful and why do you think it was?
So I think we've seen the most success with the water sprint, and partially just because the beginning of the year was a bit crazy with all of the trainings, and then the energy sprint followed pretty quickly on from that. So we had just a little bit more time to prepare for the water sprint, and we really had the time to go into every single hall. So we've been to all 20 halls doing the engagement with the quiz, with the pledges, with the succulent. So that really helped us raise the profile of the water sprint. Personally, I also think that perhaps water consumption is slightly easier for the students to relate to, because they see the water that's going down the drain when they're showering with the energy. Yes, they see the light that they turn off, but with the heating and with everything else, it's a slightly more abstract concept. But we did, because one university decided to do 2 energy sprints, and we did come up with a new way of engaging with them for the second energy sprint, when we took the operation game and we adapted that, and we had the badges, and then that worked really well as well. So yes, I think this year we saw the most success with the water sprint, partially because it's just like we took the time to come up with a really interesting concept, and we had the time to do the engagement in every single hall. So we were in every single hall for a couple of hours, telling them about what's going on, and then following up every single week on social media, and the mailing list that we had from the Freshers Fair. So yeah.
Thank you, Masha. We have Amanda from Fanshawe College in Canada. If you're interested to make a comment. So hi, Amanda.
I don't have a microphone.
We can hear you. Okay, maybe I took Amanda by surprise. So then I will go to the last question. How do you measure change? Did you have any reduction targets at the beginning of the competition, or was it all just relative to which halls reduced the most? For example, did you find the water reduction due to shorter showers? And I think that we received this question before you showed your last slide with the numbers.
So yeah, data is crucial, and most of the universities that took part, they have automatic metering systems, so they get their data online in every half an hour, and that really helps, because then after a month we just do some data crunching and we have the numbers. Because and some universities that don't have that, they have to do the meter readings. And then what the universities need, they need a whole data set for the year before they start doing reduce the juice, and then for the year when they're doing reduce the juice, because the halls are very different. Some of them were recently refurbished, some of them are older, so we can't really compare them. So what we do, say when we ran the energy saving sprint in November 2016, we knew how much energy they consumed in November 2016 when the reduce the juice intervention happened, and we looked then at the energy consumption in the same hall in November 2015 when there was no reduce the juice going on. And then also we took into account the heat degree days, because otherwise you can't really compare one year to another fairly. And then after doing all of that, we saw the percentage increase or the percentage decrease in energy consumption, and then have a look at the percentages, and that way we felt that that's the most fair way to compare it.
Thank you very much. Before we conclude today's webinar, I wanted to remind you about our next webinar, which will take place in a week, next Wednesday, starting at 3 for 90 minutes. This webinar will explore the role of institutions of higher education in the emerging national carbon pricing dialogue. Presenters will provide participants with the tools to pursue 2 different options and to plug into a network of other institutions working on putting them into practice. For more information, visit our newly redesigned website and register today. You'll also find the schedule of future webinars, workshops, and information about this year's conference on the website too. Thank you all for attending our webinar today. Thank you, Masha and John, for your presentations and for discussion and sharing your expertise with us. If you have any additional questions, attendees, please email them to webinars@aashe.org or to me directly at daita.sergi@aashe.org. The recording and presentation materials will be available in the AASHE Campus Sustainability Hub tomorrow, and you'll receive a notification once they're uploaded. Have a good day, everyone, and good night, John and Masha. Thank you for staying up late for the webinar.
Good night. Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Night.